Well, the good news is everything you're talking about, I think, boils down to one of our 15 concepts, which we'll get to in a minute.
Okay.
And it really is usually part and parcel of any couple's relationship intention. And it really is all about this bugger.
Mm-hmm.
Being compassionate. So when you talk about, I was writing some notes down, making sure each person is heard. That's compassion in action.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to communicate. Communication to me between two people really does come under this. In other words, if we're practicing compassion, our communication will be good.
Sure.
So what does that really mean? And it means a lot of the stuff you said. Not jumping to conclusions. In other words, being present with
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, right? And staying there. So another thing that compassion means, so in communication, I say something to you, and if we're really having a compassionate conversation, which is different from the kind of conversations you have at work, you
Sure.
kind of get a free pass, you don't have to do those at work.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least it sounds like you don't have to, right? So if we're having a compassionate conversation, then I'm just going to say something to you. And then I might ask you, or you might just volunteer. So just to be clear, it sounds like, Stephen, you are saying blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now that sounds like basic, simple, everyday stuff, but we tend to skip through a lot of that because we assume we know what the other person is saying.
Sure.
And based on that assumption, we're already responding, and maybe the assumption was wrong in the first place, and now there's just flotsam and jetsam running around, and inevitably somebody's saying, what did I do? I thought, what happened, right?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So, and that is why, because underneath it, and unless you tell me that it's wrong and you guys are doing that well, but underneath it, it's really just taking a lot of assumptions that we're making and backing up and saying, before I run with this, let me be sure. So, Stephen, did you just say blah, blah, blah? And then I get to say yes, no, or sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if I say yes, that's exactly it. Well, right then in that moment, I'm going to like you a little more. I'm going to feel a little bit more connected because I'm feeling heard, and there's space, and there's a little more room, and now my defenses are down. And now you, from certainty about what it is that I said, can respond. Now maybe it's the same response you had running before I even said what I said, or maybe you're even going to make a bit of an adjustment, or maybe it totally fits. And then
Mm-hmm.
you respond to me, and then I get to say, or then I say, so it sounds, Nick, like you're saying to me, blah, 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 blah. And again, you get to say yes, no, or sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's no, Stephen, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. Oh, all right. Well, give it another go, please. And you might have to go through it a few times. But again, to me, everything I'm talking about is what we would be doing if we were on purpose intending to be compassionate with one another,
Mm-hmm.
right? It really does come down to, I mean, you could argue, I could argue, and I often have, that compassion is just listening. But then in communication and in relationship, we want to prove that we've listened, that we've heard, and the other person wants to be heard. That's the whole
Mm-hmm.
point of having the relationship, right? Room and space for me to be who I am. So then you come back to me and say, no, that really wasn't it. And then I can, or I forgot where we were, but then the other person can adjust. Oh, okay, or give me more information. And then, so it's like really being clear every step of the way that your intention that each other is heard is actually happening. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got the idea down, right? You just want both of you to be able to be heard. So this is a way to do that. Does it make sense?
It does, and unfortunately for me, I guess those are all things that, like, I feel that I do, but then it gets to a point where those kind of go away, where it's like, okay, checked in, checked in, checked in, and then it's like, all right, well, let's get to this solution. And I'm very bad with just letting things stay open and say, well, let's table this. We'll talk about it in a day or two. Cause it's like, well, let's get it done now. And so
All right.
I think that speed part is part that drives to then say, we need to come to a solution, even though it might not be the best space to do it. There might be tempers flaring where it's probably in everybody's best interest to say, let's call a timeout, give ourselves a breather for some time, and then, come back into something.
So the question that I would have for you in that situation then, a familiar question in spiritual workout world, which is, let's say you reach that point where one person is saying, hey, we've aired out a lot of stuff, let's sleep on it for a day or two and come back. What does it mean to you, Nick, in that moment that that's the choice, or that's the recommendation or the suggestion or the request? What does it mean
Well,
to you to put it off for that day or two?
it just popped up. It's being uncomfortable with uncertainty. So that's that, like, because I just don't like being in that space. I don't need things to be everything like this is the way it's going to happen, but things that I have some control in. So if it's a conversation that I'm in, to be like, all right, let's get to a resolution here.
All right. So the belief is this has to be resolved.
Yes.
It's my job to resolve this. Okay. So belief around resolution and what that means to you sounds like a piece of what might be tripping you up or getting you to that place, right? And I get that. If I have a belief that, well, resolution is the goal, doesn't matter what the subject is, doesn't matter who's doing what or how much emotion has been spent or drained. All that matters is resolution. Like, I can't rest unless we resolve, right? So if I were you, I just like we found that family of beliefs with Linda and a few of them that sort of overlapped and they were all kind of the same. That's the same thing going on here for you. So this is like a you thing as it pertains to communication in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you're being asked repeatedly for space between a conversation and resolution, and you have a belief that resolution is paramount, then that belief is what's making you uncomfortable. And I'm offering
Yes.
that up because if that's the case, then that belief can be changed. And that's up to you. And you might say,
Mm-hmm.
well, no, I have no desire to change that belief. That's been serving me very well. Or it serves me over here when I'm at work because I'm paid to
Mm-hmm.
resolve things. And the sooner I can resolve them, the better it is. And if I can cut somebody off at 50% of their story and then that's all a good thing. I get that, right? So now you're in relationship. That part isn't working so well. Not the most unusual dynamic on the planet, right? And so there's opportunity then, again, to just review those beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to mean that to me. Because I know
Sure.
that I know because it means that to me, and then we have to do it, then I'm uncomfortable and I'm living in uncertainty. So another place to go, so that's one whole, I think, significant area of exploration for you. And again, we can do that. We can do some of that here now together. You can kind of go off and do it in your own laboratory. Another another place for you, Nick, to go with this dynamic would be, let's say you do say, all right, I'll change what I used to believe about resolution of issues, or I'll change it for this relationship. But then that part that's uncomfortable, that part of uncertainty or doubt or whatever it is, So that's exactly what we were talking about before. So here I am, present moment, in some situation that's not so much to my liking, but I do believe I'm here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can start to think about that for yourself. Like, what is so hard for me here? What is it about this uncertainty that I don't like? What is actually uncomfortable? And all getting to that question. So, in this situation that is not to my liking, I'd much rather resolve this now than leave it
Mm-hmm.
hanging for a few days. But I'm also endeavoring to be different in this relationship. And for all these reasons, I'm willing to try this thing, but it's still uncomfortable for me. So now we ask that question. I'm here for a reason. So who do I have to be right now? What muscle do I have to grow or develop in order for this 2-day delay in the resolution for me to feel more at peace?
Mm-hmm. So in talking through that, and I've tried to will it into place to be like, all right, work is this behavior, personal life is this behavior, and it's just like a few conversations, everything's great. Getting to the third or fourth, then it's just like this wall just erected itself out of nowhere, and it's like shit just ran into that. Make the same issues, create problems with our relationship, and then kind of go through the whole thing all over again.
Right. And so I think you said it before, you try to will it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
haven't been cultivating anything, just been trying to force
right.
things
So
to work out.
boy, this is bad lighting for me today. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. So willing something, trying to force it through, it's just then all the other energy has to either doesn't go anywhere because that
Mm-hmm.
belief system is still underneath it. So that's an example. So if the belief system is not resolving is not okay, I'm just, abbreviating.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm not doing my job if I don't resolve this, something like that. If that's what's underneath it, then anything you try to do on top of it, that will try, like you say, it'll have a little bit of an effect for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but fundamentally nothing's changed. So
Sure.
then you kind of forget about it. And this is the thing that's driving the show. We must resolve this. We
Mm-hmm.
can't walk away from this. I'm screwing up if I don't do
Sure.
this. Again, whatever that stuff is. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of change by changing at this level. We beliefs matter, they create
Sure.
experience. And they do that whether we're conscious of them or not. So what we're doing in this conversation, and I don't mean to imply that what we're talking about is necessarily the gestalt of everything in your
Mm-hmm.
initial question. It may or may not be. But until we can address it at the level of belief in a situation like this, it's sort of deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah. And I mean, as we're talking through it now, like I think the belief is more that it is my responsibility to bring this to a resolution. And where I feel like that it's, and now just thinking about that, like I have no idea what that stems from, but it's there because I can clearly think of conversations I've been in where it's like, I'm just taking it on myself that we need to get things figured out when there may not even be anything to get figured out. It's just we're talking.
Right.
But I feel like there's some overlying responsibility.
Yeah, I get it. And good work on that. So just in this conversation, Nick has gotten, more refined to what it is.